Welcome to John's Maths Book. In this video, we're going to be looking at solving quadratic equations using the factoring or factorizing method, where the coefficient of x squared is greater than 1. If you like these videos, then please like, subscribe, share, and add comments as usual. If we look at a quadratic equation written in the standard form, it's y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. When using the factoring method, we need to rewrite the quadratic equation in the form y is equal to a times x minus r multiplied by x minus s, where r and s are constant values. If we plot the graph of a quadratic equation, it's a parabola shape. To find the roots of the quadratic equation, the roots occur when y is equal to 0, or at this point here on the graph and this point here. So the graph will go through those 2 points where y is equal to 0. So there are 2 roots of the equation, so we need to find 2 values of x. So let's look at an example of how we would do that. So let's look at the example 3x squared plus 5x minus 2 equals 0. So to solve this using the factoring method, we need to find 2 values, 2 numbers, let's call them r and s, which when multiplied together give us the same value as a multiplied by c. So r times s is equal to a times c, which in our case a times c is 3 multiplied by minus 2. So 3 multiplied by minus 2 is equal to minus 6. And also r plus s, so r plus s must add up to be equal to b, which in our case is 5. So let's look at some numbers that when multiplied together give us minus 6. So we can have minus 2 times 3 equals minus 6. So minus 2 times minus 3 is minus 6. But when you add minus 2 to 3, you just get 1. So it doesn't give us the 5 we need. So let's look at some other ones. Let's look at 6 times minus 1. That also gives us minus 6. When we add 6 to minus 1, that gives us 5. So 6 minus 1 equals 5. So the 2 numbers we're looking for are 6 and minus 1. So let's rewrite the quadratic and split the middle term. Isn't a 5x there? So 3x squared plus 6x minus x minus 2 equals 0. So if we take this part first, then we can factorize that, and it works to be 3x into x plus 2. Now if we look at this bit here, that is the same as saying minus x plus 2, and that equals 0. So we can factorize this expression here as there's a common term of x plus 2. So let's factorize it, and we get x plus 2 multiplied by 3x minus 1 equals 0. So now we have 2 equations. So we have x plus 2 equals 0 and 3x minus 1 equals 0. So x equals minus 2 if we solve the first equation, and x is equal to 1/3 solving the second equation. So for exercise number 1, let's see if we can find the roots of the quadratic 2x squared plus 5x minus 7 equals 0. So pause the video now and see if you can work out the answer. So hopefully you got the answer. So the first thing we need to do is find two numbers that when multiplied together, so let's call two numbers, let's call them R and S. So when multiplied together gives A multiplied by C, which in this case is 2 times minus 7, which is minus 14. And when added together, R plus S gives the value of B. So it gives the value of B, which in this case is 5. So let's look at some examples of numbers that multiplied to give us 14. So we can definitely say that minus 1 times 14 gives us minus 14. But when we add minus 1 to 14, we get 13. So that doesn't do the job. So we can look at 7 and minus 2. So let's look at 7 times minus 2. That also gives minus 14. Now when we add 7 minus 2, that gives a value of 5, which is what we want. So we can use the values of 7 and 2 in our equation. So let's split the middle term of 5x, and we can rewrite the equation as 2x squared minus 2x plus 7x minus 7 equals 0. Now if we take this expression first, we can take 2x out of that, and we can say 2x multiplied by x minus 1 is written in the same way. And in the expression 7x minus 7, we can remove 7 from that. We can say plus 7 multiplied by x minus 1. And that all equals 0. So now we have a common term of x minus 1. So let's factorize that whole expression. So we have x minus 1 multiplied by 2x plus 7 equals 0. So now we have two equations that equal 0. We can write them as x minus 1 equals 0 and 2x plus 7 equals 0. So solution, or the roots of our equation, are x equals 1 and x equals minus 7 divided by 2, which is 3.5, minus 3.5 I should say. For exercise number 2, let's find the roots of the quadratic 6x squared minus 5x minus 4. That equals 0. Let's pause the video now and see if you can work out the correct answer. So hopefully you got the answer. So we need to find two numbers, r and s, and when r is multiplied by s, it equals a multiplied by c. So a is the coefficient of the x squared term, which in our case is 6, multiplied by c, which is the constant term, which is minus 4. That is 24. Sorry, that's minus 24. So let's look at some numbers that when multiplied together multiply to minus 24. So we have minus 1 and 24. That equals minus 24. But when we add those numbers up, it doesn't come to minus 5, it comes to 23. So let's look at minus 8 and plus 3. So 8 times 3 gives us minus 24 again, which is what we want. And minus 8 plus 3 gives us minus 5. So that also satisfies r plus s equals b, which is minus 5. So let's use the numbers minus 8 and plus 3. So splitting the middle term of the quadratic gives us 6x squared plus 3x minus 8x minus 4 equals 0. If we look at this part first, if we take 3x and multiply that into 2x plus 1, and then we now look at this term and we say minus 4 into 2x plus 1 all equals 0. Now we have a common term of 2x plus 1. So if we factorize, we get 2x plus 1, and then that's multiplied by 3x minus 4. That all equals 0. So we now have two equations, 2x plus 1 equals 0, and 3x minus 4 equals 0. So if we solve these two equations, solving the first one, we get x is equal to minus 1 divided by 2. And the second one, we get x is equal to 4 divided by 3, which is equal to 1 1/3. So for exercise number 3, let's find the roots of the quadratic. 2x squared plus 5x minus 12 equals 0. Pause the video now and see if you can work out the answer. So hopefully you got the correct answer. So we need to find two values or two numbers. Let's call them r and s. When r multiplies by s, it needs to be the same as a multiplied by c. So the value of a is 2 in our case, because it's the coefficient of the x squared term, multiplied by the value of c, which in our case is minus 12. And that equals minus 24. And r plus s needs to equal b, which in our case is 5. So minus 24, so numbers that multiply together to give minus 24. Minus 1 times 24, that gives minus 24, but when we add those two numbers up, it only gives us 23. Also, let's have another look. Let's have a look at 8 times minus 3. That also gives us minus 24. And if we add these numbers up, 8 minus 3 gives us 5. So that those two numbers work. So 8 and minus 3 definitely work. So let's rewrite the quadratic equation and split the middle term. So we got 2x squared plus 8x minus 3x minus 12 equals 0. So if we work on this part first, it gives us, if we take the 2x out, so we can take 2x into the bracket of x plus 4. And then in this part of the expression, we can say that is the same as minus 3 multiplied by x plus 4. And that all equals 0. Now we have a common term of x plus 4, so let's factorize that. So x plus 4 multiplied by 2x minus 3 equals 0. So now we have two equations. We have x plus 4 equals 0 and 2x minus 3 equals 0. So So let's solve these two equations to find the roots of the equation. So to find the roots of the quadratic. So we have, in the first case, we have x is equal to -4 and x is equal to 3 divided by 2, which is equal to 1.5. So for exercise 4, let's find the roots of the quadratic equation 3x squared plus 7x plus 4 equals 0. Pause the video now and see if you can work out the answer. So hopefully you got the correct answer. So to solve this, we need to find two numbers. Let's call it R and S. When multiplied by S is equal to A multiplied by C. Now A multiplied by C in our case is 3 times 4, which is 12. And when we add R plus S, that needs to add up to B, which in our case is 7. So let's look at two numbers when multiplied together give us 12. So we can have 1 times 12, that equals 12, but when we add them up it gives us 13. How about 3 times 4? When multiplied that gives us 12, and when we add 3 to 4 we get a value of 7, which is what we want. So we'll use that in our expression or a quadratic equation. And now let's rewrite the quadratic and split the middle term 7x. So we can write it as 3x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 4 equals 0. So if we work on this part of the expression first, we can take 3x out of that and multiply into x plus 1, which is the same. And then in the second part of the expression, this part, we can say that is the same as 4 multiplied into x plus 1. That equals 0. Don't forget the plus. So now we have a common term of x plus 1, which we can factorize. So if we take that out, x plus 1, and we can multiply that by 3x plus 4, which equals 0. So we have two equations now. We have x plus 1 equals 0 and 3x plus 4 equals 0. So solving these two equations, we get the roots of our quadratics. So in this case, we have x is equal to -1 and x is equal to -4 divided by 3, which is 1 1/3, -1 1/3. So that completes this video for looking at the solution to quadratic equations where a is greater than 1.